This is Johnny,
and Locust.
and we are live in the Pine Barrens, where tonight we are doing a first ever internet broadcast, cable, ham radio broadcast, all live, all real, and we are doing it with the help of a psychic and a sound man who has the ability to record sounds from other worlds, otherworldly sounds.
3 people venture into the woods in order to document and investigate an urban legend. None of them return. Sound familiar? Oh wait, actually it was 4 people and 1 person did return. That is the plot of The Last Broadcast, released in 1998, 1 year before The Blair Witch Project. So what happened? Why didn't it catch on, and why don't we remember it? Well, what is The Last Broadcast? It is a found footage film, and IMDb simplistically puts it as a film crew ventures into the forest in search of the mythical Jersey Devil. But a more detailed summary would be these 2 guys host a local cable show called Fact or Fiction. One day they get an anonymous call saying, hey, you should go investigate the Jersey Devil. So they do, but they're like, we can't do this alone. We need to hire this guy who's really good at recording audio, specifically paranormal audio. And then let's hire this guy who's a trained psychic. Let's go into the woods now. The 4 of them go into the woods. Only one of them returns, the psychic. And the psychic is accused of murdering the rest, tried and found guilty of their murder. What I just said sounds interesting, right? These guys investigating the Jersey Devil, something happens to where they die and then the one survivor is pinned for the murder. Yeah, I'd watch that. But turns out that's not really what the movie is. The movie is actually mostly this guy. His name's Lee. And Lee made a documentary about those events. So what we're really watching is a documentary about the found footage of the woods.
The question in my mind was why? Why would a man commit such crimes?
So imagine if the Blair Witch Project was just a Netflix documentary hosted by a random guy who shows 5-second clips to give you context. Three film students, Heather, Mike, and Josh, ventured into the woods to investigate an entity known as the Blair Witch. The 3 students got lost as Mike kicked the map into the river.
I kicked that fucking map into the creek.
The 3 were never seen again. The majority of this movie is Lee narrating over the found footage instead of the found footage itself.
The trip began at sunrise. Stephen ran a video camera much of the time, documenting what should have been amusing but banal preparation.
Which is a little bit disappointing because I'd love to see the raw footage of what happened that night, and it's not like any of it's missing or gone. They explicitly say they have hours of footage, but yet they only show these tiny little clips of their trip. Which brings me to mention another disappointment, which is there's really no talk of the Jersey Devil at all. The Jersey Devil is simply a device to get these guys into the woods. Once they're in the woods, there's really no mention of the Jersey Devil. The audience is never meant to question whether or not the Jersey Devil is real in the first place. They just frame it as these guys got murdered in the woods by a human. I wonder who that human is. That's the documentary. Nothing really to do with the Jersey Devil or if it's real or not, which was a bit disappointing, and which leads the IMDb summary to be a little misleading. What I'm getting at here is the big spoiler for The Last Broadcast, that being Lee is actually the murderer. That's right, he's making a documentary about the murders that he committed himself. Crazy, right? We see that he's the murderer at the very end of the movie when it breaks out of the documentary perspective into just an omnipotent third-person perspective where we watch Lee kill a woman who's close on the trail of figuring out that Lee is the murderer. I am being a little harsh on this movie because it's a good concept, but sadly the execution wasn't really there. The majority of the movie is just Lee's sort of monotonous voice going over them packing for the trip, getting ready for the trip, going on the trip, and then it kind of just skips over the trip itself and goes straight to the court case about the psychic who was framed for the murders, and then that's kind of it. I'm not going to completely trash this movie and say Blair Witch just did everything better and blew it out of the water, because in reality, this movie had a budget of $900. That's right, less than $1,000. The Blair Witch, $35,000. So I'm not going to compare the two and say obviously Blair Witch did everything better that this should have, because this movie simply did not have the budget means to do things the Blair Witch did. But a lesson I think we can take away from the Blair Witch Project is one of tension. The Blair Witch Project starts by interviewing various different people around the town and getting their interpretations of what they think the Blair Witch is. During this time, they feed the audience a bunch of scary stories. We don't know which one's real, which one's fake, but by the time we're out in the woods and it's nighttime and it's pitch black and you hear a noise, it's up to your imagination to fill in what that noise could be using the information of those scary stories told to you at the beginning. That's what I love about the Blair Witch Project. There are no jump scares. It's just noises in the dark, and it's up to you to put the pieces together in your mind to create something horrifying. What the last broadcast does is simply narrate to you events that happened and doesn't force you to use your imagination.
Jim was indeed leading the group into very remote regions of the Pine Barrens, areas where there was no hope for help or aid from the civilized world.
Sure, there are parts in the last broadcast that call into question whether or not the psychic guy did commit the murders or not, but that's really about it. And again, there's no mystery about the Jersey Devil at all, which sucks, because I really want to see a Jersey Devil movie. So yeah, the last broadcast would have been extremely more successful just plot-wise as a movie if it was just raw footage of these guys going out into the woods investigating an urban legend, but that's extremely easy to say in hindsight. I will say an interesting idea that the last broadcast has that the Blair Witch Project doesn't is the guys in the last broadcast are actually live streaming all of their footage. Imagine the kind of things that could have happened in the Blair Witch Project if they were live streaming. They can call for help on the live stream when they get lost. They can question if anyone's watching in the first place because no one has helped them. There can be like IRL stream snipers who visit them and make weird noises and scare them. There's so much potential for a live streamed found footage movie, and I'm sure it exists, so tell me what it is in the comments. But the last broadcast doesn't really play with that either, but I just thought it was an interesting aspect that the Blair Witch Project doesn't have. The last broadcast is not the Blair Witch. These filmmakers did not set out to make a movie about guys who went into the woods to investigate a paranormal thing and then end up dying. They wanted to make a documentary made from the perspective of someone who committed murders. It just so happens that those murders were committed in the woods while people were investigating something paranormal. Little did they know that they were this close to an idea that would later go on to be a worldwide phenomenon. And again, I'd like to give these guys props from just making a movie less than a Disneyland annual pass. To summarize everything, you know when you're doing an escape room with your friends and you guys are stuck and don't know what to do, but all of a sudden you find this hidden box, but it's locked, and your other friend actually figures out the combination to open the box. Everyone's going to give him praise for opening the box, but not you for finding it. The last broadcast found the box, but the Blair Witch Project just opened it.
But that doesn't matter at this point, because Steven, our main host, is missing. Johnny Love is gone.
I just want to apologize to Mike's mom, and Josh's mom, and my mom. And I'm sorry to everyone.